I wasted 30 years planting the wrong flowers. I am 74 years old. I have been gardening for over half a century, and if I could go back to the very beginning, knowing what I know now, I would rip out almost everything I planted in those first 3 decades and start over with just 10 plants. 10. That is all you need. Most gardeners never hear about them. Nurseries rarely push them. But these are the plants that actually deliver. They come back stronger every single year. They bloom for months instead of weeks, and they ask almost nothing from you in return. The plant at number 1 on this list changed my entire philosophy of gardening. I ignored it for years. I thought it was too simple, too ordinary. Then I planted one, and I realized everything I believed about perennials was completely wrong. But we will get to that. Let me start with the mistake that cost me 3 decades. For the first 20 years of my gardening life, I chased catalog showstoppers, peonies that bloomed for 2 weeks, oriental poppies that vanished by July, delphiniums that needed staking, deadheading, and constant babysitting. My garden looked incredible for maybe 6 weeks a year. Then it turned into a wall of green leaves and disappointment. I spent more time nursing those plants than enjoying them. I thought that was just how gardening worked. I thought beauty required suffering. I was wrong. Then one summer, almost by accident, I planted a purple coneflower. And it bloomed from June until October, 5 months, without me touching it once. That single plant cracked open everything I thought I knew. I started searching for others like it. Plants that bloom for months, not weeks. Plants that thrive on neglect. Plants that get better with age instead of falling apart. It took me years of testing, failing, and observing, but I eventually found them. 10 perennials that, if I had known about them on day 1, would have saved me 30 years of wasted effort, wasted money, and wasted weekends on my knees in the dirt. Here they are, ranked from excellent to absolutely life-changing. Number 10. Shasta Daisy. 5 months of clean white blooms from a plant most people overlook. The variety you want is called Becky. Not just any Shasta Daisy, specifically Becky. I planted her 15 years ago in a spot that gets brutal afternoon sun. She is still there, still blooming her heart out every summer from late May through September. But here is the part that took me 7 years to figure out. If you cut the entire plant back by half in mid-July, after the first wave of flowers finishes, you trigger a second complete flush of blooms that lasts until frost. For 7 years, I got good results from this plant. After I learned the midsummer cutback trick, I got spectacular results. Nobody at the nursery ever told me that. Becky spreads slowly through underground runners. After a few years, you can divide one clump in early spring and get a dozen new plants for free. She drops seeds, too. Little volunteer daisies pop up in places you never expected. Plant her 18 inches apart in full sun, water deeply once a week the first summer, and then leave her alone. If I were starting over, Becky would be one of the first things in the ground. Reliable, tough, and generous. Number 9. Purple coneflower. This is the plant that changed everything for me. 5 months of bloom from June through October with 0 deadheading. And here is the thing that took me a decade to understand. You do not deadhead these. Everyone tells you to deadhead everything. With purple coneflower, leaving the spent blooms is actually the right move. Why? Because goldfinches eat the seeds all winter. I have watched flocks of them land on the dried seed heads in January, clinging to the stems while snow falls around them. If you cut those seed heads off, you are removing a critical winter food source for birds that need it most. The variety Magnus is what you want. Massive flowers, 4 to 5 inches across, with purple petals arching gracefully around a spiky orange center cone. These are native North American plants, perfectly built for our climate. Heat, cold, humidity, drought, they handle all of it. I have plants in a bone-dry spot that gets no supplemental water after the first year. and they bloom just as heavily as the ones I pamper. But here is the real secret. Purple coneflowers get dramatically better with age. Year 1, modest bloom. Year 3, impressive bloom. Year 5 and beyond, you get plants 3 feet across, absolutely covered in flowers for 5 straight months. Do not judge them the first season. Give them time. They will reward your patience in ways very few plants can. Number 8, catmint. 6 months of lavender blue clouds. That is what catmint gives you. The variety Walker's Low blooms from late April through October. 6 months from a single plant that asks almost nothing from you. Here is the entire maintenance routine. 1 cut per year. In mid-July, grab your head shears and cut the plant back by half. It takes about 5 minutes. Within 2 weeks, fresh growth pushes through, and you get a completely new wave of flowers that carries you all the way to frost. The foliage smells like mint when you brush against it. That scent is not just pleasant, it naturally repels many garden pests. I planted catmint next to my roses, and the roses get noticeably fewer aphids. Bees go absolutely wild for the flowers. On a sunny afternoon, you can hear the hum of activity from 20 feet away. I planted Walker's Low along my front walkway 12 years ago. Every single time I walk to the front door, I brush against it and release that wonderful scent. It is one of those plants that makes you smile without even trying. If I lost it tomorrow, I would replant it the same day. Number 7. Blanket flower. 5 months of fiery red, orange, and yellow flowers that look like tiny sunsets. From June until hard frost. But here is the part that will surprise you. This plant blooms better in terrible soil. I learned this completely by accident. I planted some in my good garden beds and some in a terrible spot near the driveway where the soil is mostly clay and gravel. The ones in the bad soil bloomed twice as heavily. Rich, amended soil makes blanket flower produce lush foliage but fewer flowers. Poor, lean soil forces it to bloom its head off. The variety Arizona Sun is the one you want. Red petals tipped with bright yellow edges. They handle weeks of 95-degree heat without flinching. They are drought-tolerant once established, and deer and rabbits completely ignore them. In a garden with heavy deer pressure, blanket flowers stand untouched while everything around them gets eaten to the ground. Do not fertilize them. Do not amend the soil. Just plant them in ordinary or even poor dirt and step back. If I had known 30 years ago that a flower could thrive on neglect and bloom for 5 months in the worst spot in my yard, I would have planted 100 of them. Number 6. Salvia. 6 months of deep purple-blue flower spikes that hummingbirds cannot resist. The variety May night blooms from May through October. I have watched individual hummingbirds work every single flower on a salvia plant, hovering from spike to spike for minutes at a time. Deer and rabbits completely avoid salvia. The aromatic foliage is something they refuse to touch. Even when every other plant in my garden gets browsed, the salvias stand there untouched, still blooming. Here is the tip that took me years to learn. After the first flush of bloom finishes in late June, cut the spent flower spikes back to the top of the foliage. If you do this one simple trim, you get a second complete round of flowering in August and September. If you skip it, bloom drops off dramatically in late summer. One small cut makes all the difference. I planted May night 15 years ago. I have divided those original plants 3 times, creating dozens of new ones spread throughout my garden. In 15 years, they have never had a disease, never had insect damage, never failed to bloom, not once. If I were building a garden from scratch, salvia would be in the first wave of planting, no question. Number 5. Coreopsis. 5 months of golden yellow flowers covering tidy little mounds. June through October, no deadheading required. The thread leaf varieties are the ones you want. Moonbeam gives you soft, pale yellow. Zagreb gives you bright, bold gold. These are native North American wildflowers. They handle heat, humidity, drought, and total neglect with equal grace. I have coreopsis planted in a spot that gets zero supplemental water and full punishing afternoon sun, conditions that would kill most perennials. They bloom beautifully every single year. The flowers are small, about an inch across, but each plant produces hundreds of them simultaneously. The sheer abundance means individual flowers fading does not affect the overall display at all. The whole plant just glows golden for months. But here is the counterintuitive lesson I learned the hard way. I planted some in my heavily composted vegetable garden, rich, beautiful soil. They grew tons of foliage and barely any flowers. Meanwhile, the ones in my worst, sandiest, most neglected soil bloomed like crazy. Just like blanket flower, coreopsis rewards you for doing less. Stop fussing, stop feeding. Just plant it and walk away. After about 5 years, the center of each clump can start to die out. When that happens, dig them up, divide them, throw away the dead center, and replant the healthy outer pieces. They come back fully rejuvenated. It is like resetting the clock. Number 4. Verbena. 7 months of ground-hugging purple, May through November. 7 months from a plant that grows only 6 to 8 inches tall, but spreads 2 to 3 feet wide, creating a carpet of deep purple flowers. I ignored verbena for years. It looked too delicate in the nursery pot. Then a gardening friend gave me a division and I stuck it in a terrible spot just to see what would happen. It thrived. 7 months of non-stop bloom without a single minute of care beyond the initial watering. The variety Homestead Purple is the one. It spreads by trailing stems that root wherever they touch the ground. I planted it between stepping stones in my pathway, and it created a solid purple carpet that I can actually walk on without damaging it. Even in the worst heat of July and August, when many perennials take a summer vacation, verbena just keeps going. And because it blooms so late into fall, it provides nectar for butterflies when almost nothing else is available. I have counted 5 different butterfly species feeding on a single plant in one afternoon. If I were starting my garden over, I would use verbena as a living ground cover in every sunny spot I could find. 7 months of color from a plant that costs almost nothing and asks for even less. Number 3. Daylily. 4 solid months of continuous color from June through September, with stragglers blooming into October. But there is a critical detail most people miss. You need repeat blooming varieties, not regular daylilies. Regular daylilies bloom once in July and then nothing. Repeat bloomers like Stella de Oro and Happy Returns send up wave after wave of flowers all season long. I grew old-fashioned daylilies for years. 3 weeks of bloom in July, then months of nothing but green leaves. When I discovered repeat blooming varieties, it was like switching from a flashlight to a floodlight. Completely different experience. Individual flowers last only 1 day. That is where the name comes from. But each stem produces 12 to 20 buds, and the plants send up multiple stems throughout the season. So, something is always opening. Daylilies are incredibly tough. Drought, flooding, sandy soil, clay soil, full sun, partial shade. They handle it all. Here is the key to maximizing bloom, though. When all the buds on a flower stem have finished, cut that stem off at the base. This redirects energy into producing new stems instead of setting seed. The result is significantly more flowers throughout the season. After about 8 years, clumps get crowded and bloom slows down. Dig them up in spring, divide into sections with 3 to 5 fans each, and replant. They come back completely rejuvenated. One original plant can become 10 or 15 new ones. If I were starting over, every border in my garden would have repeat blooming daylilies anchoring the front edge. Number 2, Russian sage. 4 months of airy lavender blue flowers floating above silvery gray foliage, July through October. But this plant is not just beautiful. It is practically indestructible in conditions that would kill almost anything else. I have Russian sage growing against a south-facing wall where summer temperatures regularly hit 95 degrees. It does not just survive, it thrives. The more sun and heat you give it, the better it performs. I have not watered my Russian sage in 7 years. 7 years. It blooms spectacularly every single summer on nothing but rainfall. The foliage is aromatic when crushed. Smells like sage but sharper. Deer will not touch it. Rabbits will not touch it. In 13 years, I have never seen a single pest or disease on this plant. Not one. Bees absolutely love Russian sage. From July through October, the plants hum with activity. Butterflies visit constantly, especially later in the season when other flowers have faded and food sources are becoming scarce. Here is the one maintenance requirement. In late winter, before new growth starts, cut the stems back hard to about 6 inches above the ground. It looks brutal, it feels wrong, but it is absolutely necessary. If you skip this step, the stems become woody and unproductive, and bloom quality drops significantly. I planted Russian sage 13 years ago in a hot, dry, miserable spot where nothing else would grow. It exceeded every expectation I had. If you have a trouble spot in your garden where everything fails, try Russian sage. It might just become your favorite plant. Number 1. Mexican mint marigold. This is the plant that surprised me more than any other in 50 years of gardening. And the reason is timing. Mexican mint marigold blooms from August through December. 5 months. But not just any 5 months. It blooms when almost everything else in the garden has given up. While your neighbors' gardens are turning brown and going dormant in October and November, this plant is absolutely covered in golden yellow flowers. It is not winding down. It is hitting its peak. I discovered it by accident 11 years ago. I was looking for anything that could give me fall color after the rest of my perennials had finished. I did not expect much. What I got was 5 months of spectacular bloom during the exact window when nothing else was flowering. The plant grows 2 to 3 feet tall and equally wide, dark green foliage that smells like anise when you crush it. Then in August, the golden flowers start appearing. Small blooms about half an inch across, but produced in such insane abundance that the entire plant glows, and they just keep coming and coming until a hard frost finally shuts things down, which in my garden can be as late as early December. Here is the science behind the magic. Mexican mint marigold is triggered by day length, not temperature. It does not bloom until the days start getting shorter in late summer. That is why it flowers so late. Do not expect anything in June or July. But from August onward, it is a non-stop golden show. I have watched monarch butterflies migrating through in October stop at this plant to refuel. When almost every other nectar source has dried up, Mexican mint marigold is still serving. It is one of the last lifelines for pollinators before winter. And here is a bonus most people do not know. The foliage is edible. It tastes like French tarragon with an anise kick. I harvest leaves all summer for salads and cooking. The flowers are edible too. Deer ignore it. Rabbits ignore it. Insects ignore it. In 11 years, I have never had a single problem. I planted it near my back patio where I can see it from the kitchen window. In November, when the rest of the garden is mostly asleep, that splash of golden yellow through the glass is the most uplifting thing in my yard. If you can only add one plant from this entire list, make it this one. I have been gardening for over 50 years, and Mexican mint marigold is the plant that proved I still had things to learn. I am 74 now. My knees protest. My back has opinions about how long I should be bent over a flower bed. I do not spend entire weekends in the garden anymore. But these 10 plants give me months of color with almost no effort. They are tough. They are reliable. They come back stronger every year. If I had to start over tomorrow with an empty yard and a bad back, These are the exact 10 plants I would put in the ground. Plant them once. Give them one season of basic care. Then step back and watch them perform. That is the lesson it took me 30 years to learn. I hope it saves you the same trouble.